Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. Today, I'm joined by an amazing guest, but before I introduce them to you, I want to ask that you please like and subscribe below. That way, we can continue to bring you these incredible stories. And if you're already liked and subscribed to our channel, we thank you for all of your support. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch Harlan, and welcome to the Truth Talks podcast. I'm here with producer Chad. Today we're doing something a little bit different for our episode, something that we feel we need to do. We want to acknowledge some people and thank some people and give a little bit of breakdown of what happened with the Boulder shooting. It was an incident that is very, very unfortunate. This is interesting for you, emotional for you, because you know a lot of these people who responded. I think it's just, again, our duty, having Boulder in our backyard, that we need to pay tribute to this.
Absolutely. And as you said, I do know several of the law enforcement officers that responded from some of the different agencies. And I've had a chance to talk to a couple of them. Some of them even reached out today, which we're actually filming this on Tuesday, the day that Officer Talley, that's the only name we'll mention, was laid to rest. And so... pretty emotional day. A lot of these men and women responded to this, selflessly. Law enforcement officers from all around the area literally dropped what they were doing, loaded up patrol cars, and ran as quickly as they could into a situation that, they had very little information on. I'm sure it was chaotic. And, I think sort of after the incident, it's important to acknowledge not just the response, but the effects that it has on those officers now a week past. And that's really what I want to focus on today, is how this incident is affecting those first responders, obviously the community of Boulder, all the people that were in that King Soopers, around that King Soopers, have been affected by this tragedy. Officer Talley is the one that we're mentioning by name, but certainly not the only victim in this. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that, his services have received national attention, but there's, 9 other lives that equally deserve that same respect and attention for their sacrifice. So,
I want to throw one thing in. Today I was watching, I saw a video on the internet because the police officer with the George Floyd case was on, and they showed a video of him, and he was, had a knee on his head and neck and so on and so forth. And the video, it looked poor. I thought it was bad. And, but there's a whole other side of law enforcement. And that's what we saw here, is everybody come to the rescue.
Right.
And, it's what saddens me a lot of times is that all of a sudden there's this movement. They want to defund the police. They want to do, police are all bad. They're terrible and what have you. And it really is. It's a really sad day for all kinds of stuff. I mean, here we are. There's one guy does one thing, and I can't judge. I don't know the whole story, but just the video that I saw didn't look good. But then you got all these guys that that rushed in to save anyone and everyone they could, and that's frustrating to me when you see that. It's like all these unbelievably heroic people, and it's one guy, and it kind of becomes that.
Well, but that's the culture we live in, right? It's easy to focus on the negative and not on, especially when it comes to law enforcement. And this isn't anything new. I mean, it's been like this since I was in law enforcement, 20 plus years ago, and even before then. We always said when I became a cop, the joke was, if you want to be liked, be a firefighter,
right?
Because everybody loves firefighters. When the cops show up, nobody wants you there. Except for a situation like this, right? What's really cool, though, is to see the outpouring of support that the community is giving, the nation is giving to law enforcement in the wake of the tragedy. I can tell you today, watching the procession, it was the longest funeral procession for a fallen officer I'd ever seen. It went, I think I heard estimates that it went for 7 miles. The main highway that it went down was lined with support from, citizens and anybody that could be there or wanted to be there was there showing support and respect. And I thought that was really cool.
On behalf of Truth Talks, you did a video, and man, it was emotional. The kid sitting there holding the sign, and oh man, it was soul crushing, man.
It was. I'll tell you, it was an interesting morning. I showed up. Obviously, I had some inside information as far as when things were supposed to get going and kind of where I wanted to set up and along the route. And I had no idea who these people were. But I'll tell you, it was bitterly cold this morning. I mean, just bone-chilling cold. And I set up in the area that I thought was, where I wanted for some different reasons. And I happened to see this family. And I couldn't help but get them on video. And they were super gracious to allow me to do that. And I'll tell you, filming that, though, was very emotional. Because obviously this family has law enforcement connection, and they were there showing their support. And, I don't know how old that kid was. I don't know. He's probably 7, 8 years old. His sister was there, his mom. And I couldn't help but think as I was filming that what must run through a kid like that's mind as they're watching a police officer being laid to rest, and to think that could have been their dad. So that was tough.
Yeah, the amount of support and stuff that you captured on video was amazing. And that that's the thing, I guess, that again, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow, but those guys, they put it at risk that there's no guarantee tomorrow.
Well, it's weird. You were talking about the defund the police and the George Floyd thing that happened. Now it's been 10 months, 9 months, whatever it was, June, I believe it was, or May last year. The sentiment that, and it wasn't everybody, but, certainly there was a movement that was very anti-law enforcement. And so to see all that support today was really powerful. But I also think it, kind of illustrates that law enforcement as a whole is good. Mm-hmm. But it's a ungodly, thankless profession, and we look at all the officers that responded, men and women, and, we're focusing sort of on law enforcement. Let's not forget, though, there were fire rescue people that responded. And a lot of people may not understand or know that in a case like that, a lot of times the fire department, because of their trucks and the ability to use those vehicles as cover and stuff, firefighters are put every bit in harm's way and do every bit of the heroic job in that situation as law enforcement does. So, while, we thank our brothers and sisters in law enforcement for what they did and for their response, I want to also acknowledge that there were others involved as well. And but every day you strap on that uniform, you strap on that badge, you strap on that gun and all the tools that you take with you to work. And I think in the back of your mind, there's a chance that something bad could happen. I think you do you get a little lethargic, because every shift, nothing happens, means the next shift, you're like, it didn't happen, and so you never know when it will.
Till it does. One of the other thing that we certainly can't let go of, we mentioned this and we talked about this off camera, but, there's going to be a lot of heroes that surface. The workers in the store probably getting people out.
Yep.
Again, you and I had talked about before, and I don't know if it's appropriate time or not, but I thought about this a lot, and I thought to myself, you know what? If I carry a lot, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I ran through the scenario in my head. I don't think you ever know what you're exactly going to do, but the scenario in my head, obviously maybe you being law enforcement would have had a different reaction to me. But I thought, if the guy's in the back, I'm getting my family out. If my family's in there, I'm getting out, right?
Right.
And maybe even if it's just me, I'm getting out so that I get to live another day with my kids. And I think I would feel guilty about that. But I also thought about it at the same time, if I was face to face with a guy, well, now it's mano a mano. I'm going to be shooting back because I have no other option
Right.
at that point. And I think a lot of people, they think they're cowboys and they're going to strap up and go back there. And I don't know that to be the case. But when you're in blue and you have a badge, you're going in.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice.
And I think you make a really great point is, we're both obviously, pro Second Amendment, people's ability and right to carry a concealed firearm legally. But nobody knows how you're going to react in that situation. The only people that truly know how they're going to react are law enforcement professionals, because you haven't necessarily been trained in that specific thing, but certainly training provides you the ability to learn how to react and train to react in that type of a situation. So how you're going to react responding to that situation. What you don't know is how you're going to react after that situation is done. And that's what we're starting to see now is, we had a friend of ours, a guy I grew up with, Vinny Montez, in the first season, right? Vinny's a commander with Boulder County. He was part of the response team. And we know from Vinny's story the mental health aspect that these calls have on law enforcement officers. And we have to remember, we ask them to do a very at times heroic job, and more often than not a very thankless job. But they're human beings too, right? They're trained to react, and that's exactly what they did. But they are human beings. They have families. They have, all the things that we all have. We shouldn't expect that they wouldn't also then have the same post-traumatic problems that any of us would have. I mean, think about the people that were just in that grocery store and the trauma that they probably are going through. I mean, I would venture to say there are some that were inside that King Soopers that may never be able to go back into to a grocery store, or even not even just a King Soopers. It may just be any type of retail establishment, because it's going to bring those things back. How are they going to react during something as for granted as the 4th of July and fireworks? Those sights, those sounds, the smells, all those things may be triggers for them as they go forward in life. And so for them, they're going to face a new reality, and they're going to face some problems with mental health that the law enforcement officer respondent are going to face.
We also did, Pat Long, guy's tough as nails, was in a uniform for 30 some years.
Yeah.
And very close to the end of his career, he gets shot. And he was talking about, needing to talk to people, needing to be around some people and all that. So, yeah, I think you're right. And I know you're going to share some things too for people that they can talk to somebody and get that.
Yeah, we want to make sure that, we're not just on here to tell a story or certainly not to try to glorify or do this for our own benefit. We chose to do this today because we see a need for it, because of, my background, the friends that we have in law enforcement, and how you as a doctor in your experience know this is going to affect them. And just as our mantra is, right, Truth Talks, we heal people through story. Pat Long's story is one that fits into this perfectly, where somebody that watched that story, if you're a law enforcement officer and you watch Pat's story, you'll understand why you need to get help. Even if you don't think you need it, why you should get it. Seek it out. Seek it from your commanders, your chiefs, your sheriffs, your chaplains, whoever it is. Seek out that help because you will need it.
The reason that we run Truth Talks is for the stories. It's ironic enough that we're now running this show when we did have an officer who was shot and who lived and got to talk about what that was like post-shooting and all the things that happened and the chaos around it. And I think sometimes what happens is these events happen, we focus on the victims, we focus on some other things, but we don't end up focusing on that mental health at the end of it.
No, and unfortunately, and this may rub some people the wrong way, but the knee-jerk reaction after any one of these events is, by our elected officials, is immediately it's a gun control problem. And while, even though I support the Second Amendment, and I do think that there are some smart gun control things that could be in place, they don't prevent these crimes. It doesn't. This is a mental health issue. And it wouldn't matter if it was a firearm, if it was a plane flown into a building, a car. When you hit that point in mental health, that you wake up one morning and you're okay with massacring one person, 5 people, 10 people, whatever it is, the tool is irrelevant. Because if that's your thought process, you're going to carry it out, whether it's with a firearm or something else. So to think that gun control is the answer, all you're really doing is depriving law-abiding citizens of that right to potentially protect themselves or others. But you're certainly not taking the guns out of the hands of a criminal. So mental health needs to be the focus. And it's like a two-pronged thing, right? We have mental health for those that are the ones subject to committing this crime. And then we have the mental health for the ones that have to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And, I think they're two totally separate things. But I think we both would agree that the mental health system is where we need to be focused.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, these behavioral issues, of course, that's the focus of what I did, right? I've studied this now for 2 decades.
Yeah.
And you do all these interviews, thousands and thousands of interviews that I've done, and you realize that people just react differently to everything, right? And you're dead on. It's a knee-jerk reaction. Quite honestly, how you see these things throughout time, throughout history, and throughout what I call data points. Nobody likes data points because data points tell the truth.
Right.
And truth is sometimes painful because we do want to blame somebody or something. Mm-hmm. And what happens in a shooting is it's always the thing, right? If they didn't have the gun, they wouldn't have done it. Well, history has shown you don't need a gun to kill a lot of people.
Right.
There's all types of aggressive behaviors, but you are 100% true. It's mental illness. No one wakes up and says, I think I'm going to go murder 10 people today, unless they are sick.
Right.
They have some sort of problem. What we also do here at Truth Talks is we don't talk about stuff subjectively from things that we may have heard. Facts are we still don't know what all's gone on.
Correct.
And so you can't jump to any conclusions. We can't jump to any conclusions. But we can certainly, without any type of reservation, say this guy had a mental illness. And that, in fact, is what caused this thing to go on, right?
Well, they've reported. I mean, there were red flags all over his social media and his family and stuff. And so, the inaction of anybody to try to get him help or to notify somebody to say, this guy's, potentially a threat, led to this. And so, yes, he used a firearm, but it's not the firearm's fault, right? The firearm didn't wake up that morning and say, I think this is what I should do.
That's a hard sell to a lot of people.
It is.
It's a hard sell. You can't sell them on it simply for the fact that they just believe that if there were no guns, none of this would happen. And I don't know what to say about that other than it just isn't supported by science. It isn't supported by data at all. So I don't know where you go with that. But I will say this, and this is something that I'll leave the end. I'll give you the last word, but I do want to say this. It is a million or billion times easier to turn in, including a family member, a spouse, a friend that you believe is capable of doing something like this, especially if you know they bought a gun or if they've gotten fertilizer or if they've gotten whatever it may be to make a bomb, what have you. It's a million times easier to turn them in to save a life than it is to have this happen and have to react post.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I get it. That's probably a tough thing to do. But I think, we're okay with all the other bullshit that we're doing as a culture with, whatever it is. We don't need to get into it, but, we know all the rhetoric that's going on out there. But yet, this could have been prevented had somebody just potentially raised a flag. And so
it is what it is. But you know what? I think, again, we want to end this podcast, tell all the victims, all their family that, we're praying for them. Horrible situation. To the officer, terrible situation. To his family. To those that were around him, knew him. To people that were in the store. To everyone who responded. It's a tough day for everyone. But everybody's in our thoughts and prayers. And it does kind of make me angry when people say, when are you going to be done with thoughts and prayers? Never. Thoughts and prayers will all be around forever because there's somebody that's going to heal from it.
Well, there's one thing we've learned from almost every story we've ran, and that is the power of faith and the belief that, no matter what happens on the physical, planet Earth, there is eternal life if that's what you believe. And so I think, it's a message that's come out through many of our stories, and I think in this case it's one to keep in mind. It doesn't immediately solve the grief and the sorrow and the sadness and the loss, but it is something to remember, and with that, it's important also to think there's 10 victims, but there's hundreds, if not thousands of people that this has immediately impacted. And I think one of the ways that people can help is, there's several funds that have been set up, and we'll post those, in the text of the post for this episode. If you would, if you want to give, if you can give, there's some ways to help out those families. Otherwise, check out your local or national mental health programs. Maybe there's something that we can do there as well. I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but there's an organization called Tunnels to Towers. And it's an organization to help first responders after a tragic situation, and they paid off Officer Talley's mortgage for him. So
yeah, which was awesome. So yeah, anybody out there listening, just again keep everybody in your thoughts and prayers. If you can help out, Producer Jazz is going to post all that stuff.
Yep.
Let's just do our part.
Yep. All right, buddy.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.